eri tā tangata, he Māori reo, he Māori ora, he Māori ora e.
For Jo'el Kōmene, his Taonga Puoro are a connection to the soul. A musician and carver with whakapapa to Nga Puhi, Tainui and Tapuika. He talks to Elizabeth Gray of his Toi Māori journey, beginning with learning whakairo, which fueled a passion for Taonga Puoro, then furthering his practice with a master's in the kōwauau. Now working in education and sharing his mātauranga, Jo'el is a key player in the revitalisation of te ao Toi Māori. Whakarongo mai.
Nau mai kia hau manu e. Tēnā koe kei te tungane mō I whaiwā kia kōrero kia wānanga tahi ai tāua mō te aha te kaupapa mō te oranga tonutanga o te Taonga Puoro. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Libby.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Nohea koe and a bit of background in and around Taonga Puoro.
Tēnā tātou, kāti. Tuia te rangi tokuna te rangi te maunga rangi ki te whai ao ki te ao mārama. Tui ta tāmore pai ki raro, whakaeke hia, whakaokoro. Tui tara uwini, tui tara wanoan. Ma te tapu ihi, ma te tapu mana, ma whakarere atu ki te rangi awatea tēnei te pau kātū. Te pau teina, koe I tua, koe I waho, koe o tō puke puke tō mā harahara. E tū huru nuku, e tū hurirangi, e tū pakau rofa. He nuku ki runga, he nuku ki raro, he nuku hina atu, he nuku hina mai. He nuku whakahotu manawa e te toa, whakaua ua rongo kia tēnā, whano, haramai, tū mai te toki raka. Haimi e, hui e, taiki e. Tēnā tātou. Me ki pēnei taku whakapapa, ko tētai waiwai ki te tai tokerau, ko Nga Puhi te iwi, ko Ngā te ue uenone, te hapu, ko puhanga tohora te maunga, ko puna ki tere te awa, ko korihi te marae, ko Ngā toki mata whauru o te waka. Kei tērā atu taha ōku, kai ronga I te waka o te arawa, ko rangiuri te maunga, ko kaituna te awa, ko tapuika te tangata, ko tapuika te whenua, ko tapuika te iwi, ko Ngā te tuhe ki te hapu, ko makahai te marae. He hononga no tāku ki Tainui waka, kia Ngāti Raukawa mā. Kia ora tātou, ko Jo'el Kōmene tōku ingoa, me tīmata ihe.
Wherever you want to ngāne, in the middle pia.
I suppose a bit about my journey in Taonga Puoro. Many years ago, ahua rua te kau I mua I nainei, I started a journey learning our reo rangatira.
Kia ora.
At that point, I thought I was pretty staunch Māori. Soon found out I didn't know a lot about our ao Māori. And I really loved Taonga Māori, full stop. And my eyes were opened up when it come to whakairo. And really wanted to get my hands on some Taonga Māori. Didn't have any at the time. I was sort of in my early 20s. And part of the reo learnings at Waikato University, there was some options there to take some elective papers, and saw this one about Taonga Puoro. And part of the course was making 5 of these taonga. And I thought, hey, this is my chance to get my hands on some Taonga Puoro. So I chose the paper and obviously made these 5 Taonga Puoro, and that was the beginning of it, I think, in terms of actually making Taonga Puoro.
Yes.
So we were, I'd say, a haututu at the time. Still are, I suppose, to some extent.
Kia ora.
And it didn't stop when the course stopped. Me and a couple of my friends decided to have a bit of a tutu of our own. So we scoped out some bamboo grown in Hamilton. Went and harvested some of that without talking to anybody. We just went and grabbed it. We saw this as a free material. And something, if we made some mistakes with it, wasn't going to be too much of an issue.
Yeah.
So we carried on making Taonga Puoro, and we used Singing Treasures as a guide. Obviously in the back of the puka rā, There's some instructions there about how to make puoro, and specifically out of bamboo. So this carried on for some months, and we quickly got a bit hoha with bamboo and wanted to look at some more traditional materials to work with. At the time, I had a good friend of mine, still is a friend of mine, Raniera McGrath.
Yeah.
He's taken off on another tangent these days, although he's still on the chisel, still playing a bit of puoro, but I'd say his main passion now is tā moko.
Yeah.
So he invited me to his house one day. We were both learning te reo at the same time. He said, hey, do you want to do some whakairo? I said, oh, I've never done any before. He says, don't worry about it. You know, I've got your piece of wood and I've got the basic tools we need. Kei te pai, hara mai ki tōku kāinga. So I went to his house and he pulled out this piece of kauri.
Whoa.
And I thought, oh, hang on, bro. You're pulling out some rākau mana here and I'm just a beginner. And I thought, oh, no, you know, I'm going to wreck this piece of wood. He said, well, if I gave you a crap piece of wood, you'd probably do a crap effort.
Good job. Yeah.
So I took that on board and I thought, well, seems like a bit of a challenge here. And I took up the challenge, took the piece of wood and I said, oh, okay, well, what do we do? So he started drawing half a pattern on the wood and I'd draw the other half. I think there was about 5, maybe 6 patterns we drew on the piece of wood. And then he would carve half and I'd observe him and then try and mimic what he was doing with the chisel.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the beginning of my journey through whakairo. And proud to say I've still got this papa whakarei, this pattern board you might call it, and always referred to it in terms of my beginnings.
Kia ora.
And go back to what was happening at that time, the beginning of the journey, and you know I can see now how far I've progressed. After that too, I was maybe having a tutu in the garage for about a year, maybe a bit longer. And it came to a point where I thought, hey, I really need to get some formal training around whakairo. So I went to Taonga o Aotearoa ki Te Ao Mutu. Whakairo courses were running out there at the time. Yes. I think I started with a level 4, or might have been a level 5 course there. And the whole purpose of that study was to ensure that I knew what I was doing, that I understood whakairo, the different patternings, the symbologies, mnemonics, a whole range of different kaupapa within whakairo, and obviously tikanga. So that gave me a good grounding in, you know, having the knowledge that I needed. If I was going to be making Taonga Puoro or whakairo in general, I needed to make sure that I was paying the art form the respect it deserves and that I was practicing appropriately within our tikanga. So carrying on from that, I did level 5, ended up going right through to doing a degree, Te Maunga Kura Toi at Te Wānanga Aotearoa. I was pretty proud of that effort. One, because I was doing a master's degree at the same time.
Yes. So
I was doing 2 full-time courses. And I managed to do that because I was going to university during the weekdays. And then 1 week in a month I would go to Apakura and do the stuff I needed to for the whakairo.
Both of the tohu come hand in hand because the kaupapa were very similar, or tell us?
My thesis was about the kōauau specifically, although there's a lot of other taonga mentioned in there as well, such as our world, an interrelated world. I used examples from other facets of te ao Māori, like maurake, waka, these sort of things, and how they were related between the two contexts. So as I was writing my thesis, I was gaining skills through whakairo as well, and they both finished roughly about the same time. So I really feel that the whakairo gave me more in-depth insight into the making of Taonga Puoro. Obviously supplemented what was going on with the more theoretical thesis writing to the practical side of things.
Further solidify the learnings and the teaching, you say?
Ana. Generally speaking, university is more theory-based, and there's obviously a strong practical element to Taonga Puoro as well.
I think in our kōrero we have talked about what you specialise in. The making of Taonga Puoro is what you specialise in, but do you have any particular part of Taonga Puoro that's not the making that you feel is a huge part of? Jo'el Kōmene?
In terms of specialty, When I sort of first got into Taonga Puoro or was introduced to this world, people were often described as makers or players or people who did wānanga, and I thought, hey, why do you have to be one of those things? Why can't you be them all?
Kia ora.
You know, I do performance, whakangahau type stuff.
Ai.
I do wānanga, and that's to share the mātauranga. And then there's the making stuff. So I wouldn't say I've got a particular specialty in one of those areas, but if we look at education in a Pākehā world, if we have a triangle, as you gain expertise, you get to the top of the triangle and you know a lot about one particular aspect. Now, when we talk about mātauranga Māori, that triangle is flipped.
Yep.
So the point now is at the bottom where your starting point is, and as you, I suppose, piki kakeakea i te aro pautama, as you make your way up the ara, it then becomes broader and broader. Now you know a lot of things about a lot of things.
Yeah. I think about the whakatauki of Pau Timara, you know, ki te noho tātou ki te pūtake o te maunga, koera anake, you know, ka kite i te pūtake o te maunga, engari ki te piki, ki te tihi, ka whakawhānui te tirohanga, and that's exactly what you are talking about right now. I was thinking about your kōrero with the wood and your carving journey. Is there pūrākau or a kōrero that you have directly involving maybe atua o te ao Taonga Puoro that further influenced your passion for this mahi?
You know, e maha rawa nā tū āhuatanga o te rākau. You know, there's many attributes and characteristics of different rākau, and the kōrero that goes along with those too. I suppose in terms of making Taonga Puoro, a lot of people will say matai is a preferred timber because of its resonant qualities. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is, if there's a particular āhua or te reo puoro that you're after, then you should seek out a rākau that will help you to achieve that.
Yeah.
We know that some rākau are harder, softer, more durable, buoyant, all of these types of things. So depending on what you're trying to achieve will guide you as to what timber would be appropriate. I've never carved a non-native rākau. I just won't. Kāre he mana I roti nā rākau manene, nā rākau tauiwi. And if we're making taonga, I think it needs to be out of he rākau Māori.
Kia ora.
For we understand that this rākau carries that Māori, carries that wairua. And if we're using foreign rākau, kari reira te Māori, te wairua, te mana.
And I think it links back to your kōrero you had with Rāniera.
Ai.
Ki te kaunga te rākau, ka kaunga hoki te taonga, yeah?
Ai.
And I think about our hononga as with Rangiria and Rangiria's approach to the right piece of rākau is one that sings when it's burnt. And I never understood what that meant, but I can hear the connections, the hononga between your kōrero and Rangiria as well. So mihi ana i nei kōrero. Moving on to our next question, what are your aspirations for Taonga Puoro? And how can this be further strengthened within our people? I know you do lots of mahi in te ao whakaako, but yeah, hei te whakautu o tēnei pātai?
Okay, tētai mahi āku. I think it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, I was approached by NZQA. They wanted to put together a whakaruruhau, or a panel of people who could write some standards to be used in education. So I went to initial hui, and that was really just to find out, well, what is this mahi about and what's happened in the past and so on. So there are a number of people involved. The most famous, I suppose, or te rangatiro nā Taonga Puoro me ki, ko Hirini. And there was 2, maybe 3 standards that were sitting there on the National Qualifications Framework that weren't being used a lot. So we were tasked with writing a suite of standards for level 1, 2 and 3 NCEA. And we've touched on level 4. In the coming years, we'll be working up to level 7 as well.
Oh, amazing.
So that tertiary institutes can be picking these standards up.
Kia ora.
So we didn't delete what was already there, we just reshaped it. So we wanted to carry that still. but to add to it as well. So we wrote a whole suite of standards, and these were broken up into 3 facets. One was Nga kōrero nehera, one was te mahi hanga, te mahi whakairo, ko te wahanga tuatoru, ko te mahi whakatangitangi. So these 3 streams there at each level that teachers and students can pick up and learn about whichever facet they decide, or all of them. Now, when we try and relate this back to education, particularly at schools, these standards can fit in a range of different subject areas, not just te ao Māori. Often, Māori things get thrown in the Māori corner and nobody else wants to know about them.
Yeah.
So we wanted to open this up to as many subject areas as possible. Social studies perhaps could be picking up Nga kōrero o nehera.
Beautiful.
Music, not Māori performing arts. Music could be picking up the whakatangitangi. We could be in a technology classroom, wood tech perhaps, making a Taonga Puoro. So one of the major goals is to make these accessible to as many people as possible. May or may not be aware, there's a huge overhaul happening at the moment, an update with NCEA and stuff like that, where now mātauranga Māori needs to be woven into every subject area.
Yep, kia ora.
Not just te reo or Māori subjects. So I've had a number of people approach me, colleagues who have said, hey, I've got to incorporate some of the stuff. Could you point me in the right direction? Hey, look at these Taonga Puoro standards.
Yeah.
There might be something there that could help you out.
Choice.
While I'm talking about education, he kaiako hau I Ngaia tonu nei, kei te kura tamatāne o Tauranga Moana, e ako ana I te reo Māori, me te mahi whakairo. Before I was a formal teacher, you might say, I was visiting a whole range of different kura groups, museums, libraries, facilitating wānanga. And it only seemed right again that, hey, I was already doing a bunch of the stuff, that I get some formal tohu behind me.
Yep.
And we understand in the academic world, qualifications talk.
Yep.
And sometimes people will discredit you, perhaps, if you're not qualified.
Or look at you differently, yeah?
Yeah, look at you differently because of the quals you carry or not. And, you know, as Māori, we understand that, hey, e rere ki e tērā ao ki te ao Māori.
Kia ora.
You know, e hara te tohu I te mana.
Ana.
Ko te mana, ke te mana. So depending on who you're interacting with, you know, you'd mention different things. I suppose at the end of the day, as long as people can see a bit of ngā kokona o te nākau, or try to see or feel that they'll think it's genuine. And I believe as long as it comes from the heart and, you know, you've done your groundwork, kare e raru.
Kia ora. And your mahi with rōreka, is that what you were talking about pre-kaiako days?
Yeah. Still carrying that name at the moment. I've always loved the word rōreka. I think the fact that it's got the word reka in there, and e hara te reka ki te arero, te reka ki te nākau, te reka ki te taringa,
Ai.
ki te henenaro, wera
Ki
atu.
ngā pito katoa, yeah?
Aye. So yeah, still doing that, although I've got a few kids now and they take up a lot of our time, but you know, if people contact me with a good time frame before the event, we can make it happen. And, you know, after every event I've done, whether that be making something, playing at a festival, whatever it might be, I've walked away with a massive feeling. And I think it's that feeling that keeps me going or keeps me sustained up until the next event or occasion that comes along. And it's sort of like in between, feels like the bucket's running empty a bit. But as you know, something pops up, someone will contact me, there's an event coming, you get your eye focused on that, working towards it as the time passes, it just rejuvenates me.
And I think too, when you were talking about the hononga between the NCEA mahi trying to incorporate Taonga Puoro in all parts of kura, the hononga is with you in your life, yeah, in your hono to Taonga Puoro in all parts of your life. You just talk about your kids. I know your mātāmua has a mana name. Want to talk a bit more about him? Or naming, yeah?
Yeah, well, ko tana ingoa ko pūkaia. And I really like the pūkaia. It's an instrument that I've been able to play with in a number of different contexts. Pūkaia was a name, and yes, partly because of the instrument, but if we look a bit deeper at the word itself, te pū o te kaya. And that's the sort of tirohanga I've had on the word about, for him as a mātāmua, to be koia te pū o te whānau.
Kia ora.
O ona tamariki. Okay, not his parents, but in terms of him being the mātāmua and the leader for his siblings, about him being strong, about him being the mouthpiece, you know, all those roles you might say which you'd expect of a mātāmua. And I've never heard of anybody else called that name.
Kia ora.
So it was partly about being unique, and it just felt right. My partner, I remember soon after he was born, she said to me, hey, it's Pukaia.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we had a 2-hour wānanga about it. We had some ideas.
Yeah.
It happened, and at that point she felt it was right, and that was the end of the conversation.
And I think also about the kōrero of the Pukaia, right? He tohu, o ki te whakatangi I te Pukaia, you're pretty much telling everyone what's up, right? So the waha of the whānau, and he's true to his name.
Oh, yeah. Waha nui.
What about your tamariki? Do others possess ingoa I te ao Taonga Puoro?
Oh, kao. E re ki o rata ingoa. E hāngai ana ki te whakapapa
Ka pai.
ki ngā taonga rānei. While we're talking about Pukaia, I was thinking the other day about Waikato Uni. Someone approached me once about, hey, we got this big pōwhiri coming up at Te Koinga Marama. We want you to play the Pukaia. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. So I went and did that, played the Pukaia. After the pōhiri, one of the staff there, he came up to me and he gave me an envelope. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he goes, oh, here's a koha for your mahi. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And then there was a book voucher. They couldn't give us cash, so they gave us vouchers instead. Anyway, this became a regular occurrence. Every time there was a pōhiri at the wharenui there, they would holler at me and I'd go and play the Pukaia and I'd get a book voucher. And I thought, man, this is mana, because, you know, along the way I was able to purchase the whole set of Ngā Mō books.
Wow. Choice.
And at that point too, I thought, hey, I can earn some money doing this.
Yeah.
People had approached me, I never really put together about, hey, I'll come and perform for you, whatever that might look like or sound like, and then you get some pute out of it. Another occasion too that I remember was the first time I ever got some money about doing some mahi, Taonga Puoro. And Rangiria, she was in our class one day and said, hey, I'm going to Te Kura Kaupapa Māori o Wairarapa. Does anyone want to come? And no one really said anything. I thought, yeah, I'm keen. Anyway, time came along and I went with her. I think we had a 3-day wānanga at the Kura. They put us up in a hotel, they rearranged the hotel, brought in furniture, came and filled the cupboards up with food.
Choice.
Like, made it into our home for 3 or 4 days. I thought that was pretty amazing. Never often stayed in a hotel as a child and whāthis manaakitanga to the max.
Yeah.
So we did our wānanga at the school for these 3 days, making some taonga, wānanga, performance sort of stuff. And we went back to our hotel to just get our gears together and wind up the wānanga. We all sat down at the table and Rangiria put all this cash on the table. And I was like, oh, what's she up to? Anyway, she was like, yeah, this is what they paid us. And I went there expecting to get zero.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for anything. I just was there for the experience. And I think I was pretty lucky to put my hand up because it wasn't that many years later on that Rangiria left us. So I treasure the time that I was able to spend with her and experience Taonga Puoro. Anyway, she said to us, yeah, that's your portion, then that's your portion, and this is my portion. And I was like, what's that for? She was like, well, that's yours. You've been working. I was like, no, he pia noihua, hey? I'm just a student here. I was not expecting anything. She said, no, that's yours. And I was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Again, didn't really connect that, hey, some of the skills that I've been acquiring, learning, could actually take me somewhere.
Yeah.
I think moving on, as years have gone on, the focus has never really been about the money. It's always the kaupapa. But we know as artists, you got to feed your whānau.
Yeah.
I've had some not so great experiences with koha. And others have been overwhelming. And it all sort of balances out in the end anyway.
Yeah.
You know, going back to playing the Pukaia at the university, I think that was the beginning of, and this experience in Wairarapa that I realised, hey, he uara tō te mātauranga Māori. He uara no tō te Taonga Puoro. And they go hand in hand.
Kia ora. And look at you now, you know, mātauranga Māori, all those years ago, learning your reo and your everyday life is in and around the mahi that you put into all these years ago, yeah?
One thing on that, you know, because I'm a teacher of te reo Māori, a lot of people have said to me, teach me Māori, teach me Māori. And I've thought long and hard about that, because there were people who have helped me along the way, but at the end of the day, you got to be hungry.
Yeah.
If the hunger's not there, it's never going to happen. And to the point where you're out there seeking people or opportunities to communicate with i te reo Māori. I remember when I started learning te reo, I think this was 2004, showing my age. I think that was the year Māori TV was launched. And there couldn't have been a better resource for someone who's trying to learn the language.
Yep.
Where some words would pop out at me that I knew or understood the meaning, and then the rest was just like gobbledygook, you might say. Couldn't understand it, but hey, I picked up that word.
Yes.
And I picked up that word. And then that just started to grow more and more and more. You know, I suppose now I can watch whakapapa Māori and understand most of what's been said, depending on
who's talking.
I'm the living link in my whānau when it comes to te reo Māori. Our father was a native speaker. None of my brothers really picked up the language. Before our father passed, I was able to communicate with him in te reo, wānanga with him, and I think that made him quite proud.
Kia ora. All these beautiful gems that make up Jo'el Kōmene.
Well, now I'm a father.
Yeah.
I think it's important, and my partner and I have discussed about, hey, we need to be speaking te reo at home. We've had a bit of a rocky journey, you might say, with our kids being in Māori education and mainstream education. And I've seen some of the damage that mainstream education has done to the reo coming out of my son's mouth. We've made a change to that. Now he comes home speaking te reo, unprompted.
Yeah.
Ma te kai ana ki te ako.
Ana.
Yeah, these sort of things. So, you know, I work in a mainstream environment myself, and these challenges there. Often parents are expressing to me what these challenges are for them. I always go back to the whakatauki tamaiti ako nei te kāinga tūana ki te marae.
Kia ora.
And I've found that to be true. And if it's happening at home, it'll happen everywhere else too. So I'm not so worried about this mainstream schooling thing anymore.
Yeah.
Because I believe what's happening at home is stronger than all of that.
And the majority of the time, yeah, spent at home. I'm the same with my kids, you know, he reo Māori, he ao Māori, I te ao i te pō, and i a wā ka kōrero aki tamariki ki a mama, reo Māori only. And my son, just by being in this world, has learnt English. And so he's good to pick up if the receiver of his kōrero understands reo Māori, reo Pākehā, and he'll interchange depending on who the person is, you know. But he knows, well, mama, he reo Māori. And it's just, I think it's amazing. And I think reo Māori, say for example, you started out on your journey to all of the things, all of mātauranga Māori with the reo. How cool would it be, and is it, that your children, that's the start for them too, and it's going to just be normalised for Ngāuri whakatupu.
Yeah, fully normal in our house.
Yeah.
And they won't know. They just won't know because it's normal.
So tell me a little bit more about your tuhingaroa, your tohu pairua, about the kōwauwau.
For me, that was about diving deeper. Originally, I wanted to have it a lot broader, not just about one particular taonga, perhaps about a whānau or even Taonga Puoro in a more general light. Rangiria suggested, no, pick one. And at the time, that was obviously not what I wanted to do. But by the end of it all, I understood why. Because there's just so much kōrero. There's just so much mātauranga surrounding this one taonga. And then imagine if there was a thesis like mine, or even PhD level theses about every taonga. You know, we're talking about a whole corpus of knowledge now. it was also another opportunity for me to get some expertise and acknowledge that through a qualification. I think being a formal body of research, this allowed me to obviously dive deeper into the kaupapa and get something out of it, I suppose. Again, in my thesis, I looked at plain kōauau, how to make them using traditional tools, modern tools, and all of the kōrero that was surrounding them. And there was a whole bunch that I wasn't aware of at the time, but obviously through the research you'd found out and things like that.
Are there any kōrero or pūrākau that still stick with you to this day?
Yeah, well, these te arawa kōrero, because I'm from Tapuika, obviously, te arawa waka. And generally speaking, I'd tell our stories. Not to cover up other stories, but I think it's better for people with that whakapapa to be telling those stories.
Kia ora.
From a more authentic perspective, perhaps. Holding their whakapapa or those lines, that kōrero. Waiho mā rātou.
Kia ora.
Obviously, the famous story about Tūtanekai and Hinemoa. I've been to the edge of Rotorua and played my kōauau.
Kia ora.
People have asked me, hey, did that actually happen? I believe it happened. Of course it did.
Yeah.
But then, how can that sound travel that far? Well, I've been there and I've done that, and I can guarantee you it does travel.
Yes.
You know, from Mokoia to the mainland. I've always sort of been a person like that to actually put things to test or confirm them, you might say.
Kia ora.
And I think maybe a bit sceptical myself, because growing up in Te Ao Pākehā, a mātauranga Māori is often discredited for whatever reason. You know, if I've seen or heard it for myself, I've gone and done that, and I can say, yes, 100%, that's what happened. You know, who can negate that?
I had the privilege of sitting on Hinemoa's rock, the one she used to die from. And I was like, wow, it's so far above the water. And I think different times, that kind of basin feel, that's how that sound would have travelled to her ears. And when I retell that story in presentations, I try and live the experience, and I think, Tūtanekai must have been playing for ages for her to swim and then look up and hear, oh, yep, cool, that's the way I'm supposed to be going.
Agreed. I think too, since writing my thesis, I found that whakapapa where I can whakapapa to Tanekai.
Kia ora.
And, you know, I gained some strength in that. And maybe a bit of his toto fell down tuku iho mai ki ahe. Although there's been other people from Tapuika, such as Joseph, Te Poro and Malcolm. He's got some whakapapa to Tapuika as well, so I was happy to be able to have a kōrero with him and talk to him about his journey with Taonga Puoro. I think he died maybe 3 years ago now, which was really unfortunate because I didn't even hear that he had passed away. And about a year later, I was doing a presentation in Rotorua, and I didn't realise, but his daughter was present.
Wow.
And I had acknowledged him. I believe it was him who first and foremost initiated or stirred up the Taonga Puoro kōrero again.
Kia ora.
And Herene and others had attended this first wānanga, which wasn't much of a wānanga because they didn't know a lot at the time, although Joseph, Te Poro and Malcolm had a few of these taonga and could play them. And I've actually got a recording of Te Poro and Malcolm playing his kōauau in Ngāti Moko, one of our Tapuika marae.
Kia ora.
Yeah, so I think knowing about these people and having the opportunity to meet them and speak with them on the same level, these have been powerful experiences for me.
Privileges.
Yeah, I agree. Particularly, you know, kei te mate haere tērā momo.
Ana.
You know, I think everyone wishes, hey, I wish I could have spent more time with them.
Yeah.
But really good to see these programs like Tangata Taumata Rau,
Yeah.
those sort of programs going around and talking with these old people
Yeah.
and capturing their kōrero. Although their kōrero needs to live in the hearts and minds of people and not live on a drive or a tape or whatever the medium is. Yeah, I think I've been pretty lucky in my journey with Taonga Puoro. It's something that's touched my heart from early on in the piece, and through the performances in wānanga, I've seen it touch many more. You know, when I'm doing a wānanga, we often do some whakawhanaungatanga at the beginning, so I can get to know who's there. They can get to know me and each other and so on. And quite often people talk about mamai, and that is many different forms. Whether that's abuse, being stripped of my reo, my culture, all of that sort of stuff.
100%.
And I acknowledge that because there's something in Taonga Puoro that will help you to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
And if we're talking traditional Taonga Puoro, they'll be made out of natural materials. And it's that connection that we're more and more so losing, being connected with our natural world. You know, Māori were tohunga o te taiao. They were connected. These days, you know, myself and my kids and that, we live in houses and look at devices and we hear music coming out of a speaker and all of this sort of stuff. And it couldn't be more synthetic, right?
Yeah.
And being tangata whenua, people of the land, we need to get back to it, back to the land and feel it and hear it and be at one. So I believe part of that mamai is that disconnection with whatever the thing is. You know, on my journey learning te reo Māori with whakairo, there's been people along the way saying, why do you do that? And that's a real tough question. Well, why? I've had people say, I want to learn how to carve. And I've said, well, why is that? And it's because it's in me.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with te reo. People say it's already in you. You just need to awaken it.
Got to remember. Remember.
And bring it back. And I think those are the things that we might call passion these days, that we're passionate about, or something we believe is a part of us, something we believe is important but not necessarily possess it. And I think that creates a lot of conflict within oneself because I believe that's part of me, but I don't have it. And, you know, I know that's like that for a lot of our people who have not yet started their journey learning our language.
And I think identity is a huge thing, and a part of the mahi is the reclamation of mātauranga Māori, whether it be through wānanga, through learning your reo, through Taonga Puoro, all facets of ao Māori is going to lighten the load per se, yeah? And, well, for me, seeing that light bulb moment for our listeners going, wow, this is amazing. Why am I so drawn to that? Yeah, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's in you.
Right.
That's why there's the hunger. The fuller you are, the lighter the load. It's pretty choice. Do you have any last or final tips or kōrero for our listeners?
I suppose back to the organic reo, for want of a better word. Different taonga touch people different, depending on who you are. Find the one or the whānau that you like the best and start there. You know, I know a lot of people are like, oh, what do I play? And, you know, that's probably one of the harder questions too, because I never just play what I'm thinking or what comes from my heart. And a lot of the time that's based on the ngā mātauranga o muri, right? Because I've got all of these things moving around in my hene naro, and I'm taking those into account whilst I'm playing. You know, okay to be mimicking others as a starting point. Somewhere along the line you got to come up with your own style or groove or whatever you want to call it. You know, I can listen to things and go, yeah, that's so-and-so playing, because I know their style. And then I can, yeah, that's another person, but you're playing like so-and-so. Yeah. Which is okay. You know, that's okay.
Well, he timatanga, right?
Aye. And, you know, until you sort of find your feet. Tips, me personally, I think I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I'd like to see Taonga Puoro on marae more. I think there's no other place that they belong more than at the marae. In saying that, me and my kids now often do this at marae. Sometimes the oldies, nā kaumātua, they're not happy. Other times they're amazed. I'm talking particularly about our marae, Makahai and Te Puke, only because I know I've done wānanga with our kaumātua, so they understand what's going on, and they're all for it. They understand why. You know, for many years I waited for someone from our marae to ask me. For me, that's probably one of the pinnacles, to share with your people at your place.
Yeah, all the revitalisation and retention and normalisation of te nemia te Taonga Puoro, te ao Taonga Puoro, ngā mātauranga Māori, ngā taonga tuku iho. If we can do all of this with our own, it's further going to develop our people, yeah?
Agreed. I think too, if you can do it, perhaps the marae is the most strict environment in terms of tikanga and things like that. I think if you can get it right there, you'll be able to get it right anywhere else too.
Cracking it, yes. Yes, 100%.
You know, I'm not knocking all this other stuff that's going on out there, which I think is great, but I think there still needs to be some whakairo around, hey, is this appropriate?
Yeah.
And, you know, how they say we need to acknowledge the past to move into the future. For me, it's about, getting it back to marae, sharing it with our people so that it becomes alive again.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
You know, and that's practicing in an authentic Māori environment.
Always. Well, mena ka mātua I tēnā. He kōrero anō au ki te kore.
Oh, no, I think if Taonga Puoro is something that touches your heart, follow it. You know, go with it.
Kia ora.
Sometimes too, we want everything now, and it's not going to happen like that.
Yeah.
Oh, one tip I wanted to talk about was, in my rākei, they say, moia tō rākei, sleep with your rākei.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Taonga Puoro too, moia tō taonga, so that you become
One.
best buddies. Best buddies. At that point, you'll know how your taonga likes to sing, what it likes to sing, all of these sort of things. There's been people who have brought taonga to me and said, here, play this, and I haven't been able to.
Yeah.
Which is embarrassing, but I don't know your taonga yet.
Ai.
You know, get to know your taonga. And then things will begin to happen. Once you've got that intimacy, I suppose. You know, there's been times where I tried to play my pūtorino and it hasn't happened. And I thought, man, what's going on here? Maybe Reikatoti's shy today.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. Although when you're on a stage and you get the cue to play, mate, it's a different story, eh? Different story.
Yeah, the setup is definitely what makes or breaks, right? The setup and kia noa, kia tau, ai te tinana, te hinengaro, te ngākau, and then ka rere te reo. E mihi ana kia koe e te tungane, I ēnei kōrero ātāhua, kōrero whakahikaka I te ngākau. I want to go home and play Taonga Puoro now. I will leave the last words or kupu or rangi kia koe me tō taonga te kōauai. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Libby. Otira kia kūtei te hunga whakarongo. Nōku anō te maringa nui, te whiwhi nui, ko whai wāhi au ki te kōrero mo tēnei kaupapa. Otira hei aki, hei whakatena tēnei au koutou e whakarongo ana, ki te hikina te mana o nā Taonga Puoro, kia rangona ai, huri no te ao, I tō mara ai, I roto I tō kāinga, kia tuku iho ai hoki nā kōrero, nā wairua, nā karea roto, wera momo katoa ki wā tātou tamariki mokopuna, uri whakaheke. Kia ora ai, kia ora ai, kia ora ai. Ka tika me mihi atu kia rātou hoki, kia Hirini, kia Richard, kia Rangiiria, kia rātou katoa nā rātou anō I whakakōkiri anō I tēnei kaupapa, I takehia te ara keimui a tātou te hunga e ora tunu ana, e kawe nei I tēnei kaupapa, tēnei te mihi atu. Oa te tangi pia tēnei mā rātou, tēnā tātou. tau ana.
Ko te piko te mahuri, ko ia te tipu a te rakaui. Heri tā tangata